For example, that livestock bill is a toxic bill that is being proposed by Parliament. And perhaps just to highlight some of those things is that you'll not be able to grow fodder in your farm. You'll not easily be able to feed your cows with the millet or the corns that you're farming in your farm without the accreditation of a body they are calling an authority to regulate that. Even for you to build a small shed for your cows, you require to be regularized. For you to sell your milk, or even for you to go and get a bull from your neighbor just to come and serve your cows, you'll also require to be regularized. So some of these things are the ones that global movements are making it difficult for us to perpetuate our African traditions, culture, and to perpetuate ourselves. Why are they restricting that my neighbor cannot come and ask for some assistance from my bull to serve its cow? Simply because they want to control the genetics. They actually, in the livestock bill, establishing a genetic center. The genetic center will be manned by an authority that they have created under that particular act. It means that your cow cannot be served by the genes of by the bull of your neighbor, and therefore they are trying to globalize even the manner in which our cows will produce. Not even cows, even your dogs and your pets are also regularized by that particular act. To me, we need a full day to, or a full session to go close by close on that particular act. I've read it, I have gone through it. Is an act that we must call out Parliament to reject the way they rejected the finance bill. But also we also need to look at the question of globalization and how globalization is also influencing the manner in which and how we live. They want us to completely alienate our food sovereignty so that we may become completely dependent on them. So I will be able to join hands with Rutendo. I don't know how I get his email. Eric, you'll favor me with his email, because even the GMO case as we speak is still in court, in the court of appeal. But if you look at the judgment that came from the High Court that was delivered by Justice Angote, you realize that there must have been some serious influences behind these GMO bills, GMO judgment. And those are some of the things we also need to push Mr. William Ruto to repeal. Why should he chalk the GMO policy down our throats? It should be one of the issues that we must be able to target, because GMO is a threat to our very existence. It is threatening our food security. It is threatening us, and I've had Mr. Rutendo submitting very ably how cancer prevalence and how cancer has become prevalence within this African continent, because there's an intention by the globalists to make sure that they control us in even in what we eat on our tables. So thank you.
Thank you. Before I give to Retendo to respond, I just want to tell my listeners this way, because most people don't understand the consequences of what is just going to happen. This is what they're saying. Wewe ukikuwa na ng'ombe yako, ukikuwa huko mtaa and you have your cow, na unataka hiyo ng'ombe ikuwe serviced, yani ipandwe na bull, hauwezi fanya vile tumezoea kufanya. You see, ukikuwa na ng'ombe huko village, unaongea na jirani, anakuletea bull, ina service ng'ombe. Lakini this time huwezi, lazima upate license, na hiyo bull lazima ikuwe na license kwamba iko na the correct gene yenye wame declare hiyo ndio gene tunataka. Kitu ingine, you cannot feed your cow. Mimi huko kwangu nimezoea nikivuna mahindi ama nikivuna beans, or when I cut my bananas, I cut that banana stem na katakata into small pieces, naeka chumvi kidogo, napatia ng'ombe wanakula. This time when this bill goes through, that one is not possible. It will not be allowed. You cannot give your cow feeds that have not been regularized by that authority. So hii ni issue yenye ni serious, because someone wants to control what you eat, how you eat. Hata ukikamua maziwa, uko na ng'ombe yako hapo inakupatia 3 liters, you cannot give this maziwa to a neighbor. Labda neighbor anataka kununua. Saizi watoto wamefunga shule, they are at home, they are taking a lot of tea, na labda uko na ng'ombe inakupatia 3 liters, 5 liters, and a neighbor comes to buy. You are not supposed to sell without the authority of these boards and those authorities. So hii ni kitu serious, and this kind of globalization yenye Ndegwa anaongelea hapa ndio ime lead to the rise of chronic diseases zenye tuko nazo in the country today. Saizi kanza ziko juu. I'm sure those who are listening now, kwa familia yenyu ama haujaisikia familia yenye haina mtu ako na diabetes, hypertension. Yet mnakumbuka when we were growing up, it was very difficult kusikia mtu ako na diabetes. Very difficult. It was very hard kusikia mtu ako na hypertension. Haikuwa rahisi. But right now kila family huwezi kosa diabetes, hypertension ama cancer, arthritis, kidney diseases. Jana kwa kliniki yangu I was attending to a young man 21 years old, ako na kidney disease. Mtoto mdogo sana. Inafaa ende KMTC I think in September. A very young man 21 years old with a kidney disease, because of these foods we are eating that are being brought to our country. Na inafaa mjue kitu moja. Niko na rafiki anaishi Iceland anaitwa Job. Job tells me that the mboga that they eat is organic from Kenya. So them wanataka tuwatumie organic chakula, lakini hao wanataka kutuforce tukule inorganic chakula za GMOs. So this is a great issue that we must prosecute and resist. Rutendo.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You've said it so well, and you've summed it up in a very amazing manner. But there's another concern that is happening. There is academic imperialism that is currently taking place, or intellectual imperialism, where any thought that is African-centered is looked down upon and legislated upon by African leaders acquiescing to international conventions that they sign without interrogation of anything that is happening on the African continent. So you need to understand that the country with the most cattle in the world per capita is actually Chad. And with Chad, they actually have more cattle per capita than any other country in the world. And they have done that by preserving their cattle as the indigenous species, raised according to the indigenous tendencies or the indigenous practices. I'll give you a perfect example of how it is that we see the success of Chad. When Chad got independence in 1960 or 1961, they had the same amount of people and cattle as Zimbabwe then, 1961. 2 million cattle and about a population of about 5 million people. Today, Chad has got 32 million cattle, and Zimbabwe has got 5.6 million cattle. That means that Chad has been able to increase its herd by 6 times the amount that Zimbabwe has. Why? Because Chad, the moment that France stopped colonizing Chad, it had not totally changed the traditional practices. France had not changed the traditional practices of the Chadians. They continued their traditional methods, while Zimbabwe was exposed to hybridizing the cattle of Zimbabwe, turning them into a mix of European breeds, Indian breeds, and other breeds that were not indigenous to Zimbabwe that were susceptible to the cattle. Point number one. Point number two, there was also the proliferation of diseases like foot and mouth and other diseases, like anthrax, by the white colonizer in order to ensure that they kill the self-sufficiency and the bank of Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe compared to Chad, where the French did not do that. So I actually read the U.S. Industry of Trade encouraging American biotech companies to try and penetrate Chad with vaccines and other medications. And the question is, why would they do that? Yet the so-called most successful country in production of cattle utilizing European techniques in Africa is South Africa. They've got 19 million cattle in a population of 60 million people. That means that if Chad which has 15 million people, has got 32 million people, 32 million cattle, it's doing better than South Africa. It is doing way better than South Africa. So it's got nothing to learn from South Africa. In fact, none of the countries following the European practices of animal husbandry have anything to learn from any of the countries that are practicing white husbandry, but they have to learn from countries like Chad, Uganda, Ethiopia, and even Kenya. Kenya has been using traditional techniques, has been using a migratory pattern of herders, and that should be what we are copying. And even this new legislation on how to breed your cattle should not be encouraged, because the diversity and mixing of cattle in these migration patterns are what has made your herd very resilient. It is also what makes your cattle much more valuable in Kenya than when you buy the same cow in South Africa. But the problem is our leaders, people like Ruto. Even my own country has got a leader who is not proud of what it is that is genetically and originally Zimbabwean. They allow the attenuation of these genes. And I wanted to say before I go that together with this new act that is coming in, the current draft, you guys also have to read up on the Kenyan Seed and Plant Variations Act. Read about how it is that it is so difficult in Kenya for a Kenyan to get a license to develop seeds and to develop plant varieties in Kenya. Only Monsanto, Syngenta, DuPont, and Dell are the only companies that can do that, Seedco. And these Seedcos are not our companies. A lot of people have believed that Seedco is an African company. It's not an African company. It's a French company owned by Vilmorin that is actually Lima Grain. And that is the company that is selling tomato seeds in Europe for 60,000 euros to 400,000 euros. We will not be able to afford maize or millet if we allow this company to continue to hybridize and to turn into GMOs. And it's important for us to understand it's not only GMOs that are a threat to us. Another threat is the hybrids. And we are currently using hybrids thinking that they are not inimical to us. They are inimical because a hybrid will produce first season, second season you struggle to produce. In fact, it will not ever reproduce true, so you have to rebuy the seed.